In this video, we're going to talk about measuring economic inequality. What are we talking about? Well, when we say economic inequality, we're typically describing the way that resources are distributed across a population. We want to know whether that's done in a relatively equal manner or an unequal manner. And here's a brief example for illustration. Let's say we've got 10 individuals, and these 10 individuals are out dining at a restaurant. One thing we could do is try and identify the median income. And then we could compare that median income and look at how it changes over time to determine whether that is going up or down. So in this example, let's say our lowest earning individual makes $34,000, our highest earning individual makes $36,000. That puts our median income, our average income, at $35,000. It would be the mean in this case, but it's also the middle, the midpoint. The median is $35,000. Now, the total income in this population, let's say, is $350,000. So it gives us an idea of how that total income is divided amongst these 10 individuals. And it's relatively equal. However, that can change. Let's say an individual walks into the restaurant and that one individual earns $1 million. That changes the nature of the distribution. That raises the total income of the population a lot. In fact, it over triples it. What does that do to the median? Well, it stays the same. The median really doesn't change much. The middle income point is an individual earning around $35,000, despite the existence of one person that makes more than everyone else combined. So that can be a problem. And that's what we're talking about when we're looking at inequality. We want to find a way of measuring that aside from just looking at the median. Now, one way we can do that is what's called the Genie Index, or the Gini coefficient. And it gives a number that relates to the degree of inequality within a country, or any distribution for that matter. So let's say before that millionaire walked into our restaurant, we had a G equals 0, which was a relatively equal distribution. Pretty much everybody had the same thing. So that would be a low Gini index with a coefficient of 0, meaning perfectly equal distribution. However, that will rise when it is extremely unequal. So when that individual walked into the bar with $1 million, that Gini index went closer to 1, with one person having a lot and everybody else having not so much. Those are measures of inequality. That's one way of looking at inequality within a population. Now, there are other indicators we can look at as well. In Thomas Piketty's book, Capital in the 21st Century, one of the things he looked at was comparing R versus G. What does that mean? Well, R in his model referred to the average rate of return to capital. And when you hear that, think of investments, the money you can make from wealth that's invested. That was R. And he found that R was greater than what he called G, and G was the average growth rate of the economy. Think output and income. So to put it simply, the folks that had most of their wealth in capital, so in investments and in assets, they did better than individuals that had to sell their labor to get wages. And so he identified this as a structural difference in the economy that fueled inequality. People that had things, had wealth could generate greater returns than the people that sold their labor and that relied on just the general growth rate of the economy. So why is this a problem? Well, some inequality might be perfectly natural. In a market-based system, some folks are going to have different human capital endowments. That means they're going to be good at different things, and those skills will be rewarded differently based on the marketplace. So that's natural that some people will have skills that are valued more than others. However, too much inequality can cause problems. It can cause problems for public policy. Trying to decide what to do in terms of providing public goods and resources when there are two very different interest groups. One group's got a lot of money, the other group doesn't have much. How do you define public policy that everybody can agree on? Might be difficult. Also, access to education. If education helps prepare us for success in the workplace and it helps us generate wealth, then income inequality can really make that difficult. It can make access to education challenging for people that are at the lower end of that income distribution. It can also lead to unequal health outcomes. This is something that we see around North America, that depending on where you live and the average income in that neighborhood, you're going to have a much lower life expectancy and different standard of living than people that are in much higher income neighborhoods. And so it can lead to very unequal health outcomes. Overall, it can also lead to decreased trust in society, but also trust in elected officials. And that doesn't bode well to getting things done. It can also lead to civil unrest. So just to recap, when we're talking about income inequality, we're looking about the relative equality or the distribution of resources within a population. We could look at that by comparing the median and how the median income changes over time. We could also look at the Gini coefficient, and then of course Thomas Piketty's model. We can compare the growth rates of returns to capital versus returns to wages. There's lots of different ways we could try and analyze income inequality.